Welcome to Wizards Institute, the #1 community to learn smart investing and financial independence.
Eva Lau is one of the most well-known entrepreneur turned early-stage investors in Canada and North America. She and her husband Allen Lau raised $118 million for Wattpad and turned the startup into a global media sensation with tens of millions of users. Eva currently runs Two Small Fish, a leading early-stage venture fund based in Toronto. She is one of the most prominent leaders in the Canadian tech scene and a big proponent of women in tech. We will hear Eva's views on the state of the tech and startup scenes in Canada, her investment philosophy, and how she sees the world beyond COVID.
So maybe we'll just start with a few key things. Let's talk about Wattpad a little bit, Eva. Maybe tell us a bit about Wattpad, because most of us here know what Wattpad is, but it has changed and grown so much. And then we'll go to Two Small Fish, and also some of the other areas that you're involved in before we attack you with some questions.
Of course. Yeah, happy to tell the story. So Wattpad is co-founded by my husband and his partner. So my husband is Allen Lau, and the other co-founder is Ivan Yun. So the story goes like this. So Alan and Ivan, they used to work together in the .com days, I would say in the post.com days. At the time, Alan founded a company that are in the mobile gaming industry. So long story short, Ivan was the first engineer hired in that company. He worked there for a couple of years and he left and moved to Vancouver due to family reasons. His wife got a job. And so they have to move the family to Vancouver. And that's how they kind of parted ways during that time. And, when Alan was building that company, it was a mobile gaming company, and he found some innovation in that space, kind of, I wouldn't say by accident, but it was certainly, a lot of work. But mobile gaming was never his passion. So even during the post.com days, he kind of like prototype a reading app on the mobile phone. But back in the days, we were talking about Nokia candy bars here, which aren't showing many lines of words. So he just tinkered with it, did a prototype, but he shelved it, and then he didn't touch it for many years. And then came 2006. The mobile phones at the time became, the most popular one was actually Motorola Razr. So it's the flip phone that has, 10, 15 lines of text that people can read. And that's when Alan said, hey, maybe now people can start, using the phone to actually read some stories, meaningful ones, because the screen is much bigger. And he resurrected his pet project of reading app on a mobile phone. And then out in the blue, he got an instant message from Ivan from Vancouver. And that instant message goes like, hey, Alan, I'm working on something new and would love to get your feedback. And then, with that text, there's a link. And then Alan clicked on it, and boom, it was actually a mobile reading app on the Motorola Razr phone as well. But Ivan took it one step further, that he created a website for people to post their own content and be able to kind of read on a mobile phone at the same time. So lo and behold, they joined force and started Wattpad. But, the early days of Wattpad was actually during the financial crisis. So it was very, very hard in terms of raising money. And, we were not even in a position to raise money anyway, because mobile technology at the time was in its early days. Data access was very expensive. Connecting through Wi-Fi, in a public area, it's kind of like, wow, what do you mean I connect to the Starbucks Wi-Fi? People kind of like get scared about that kind of an idea. And, but not until iPhone 3 came out in late 2007, early 2008, that's when we finally see some traction and usage of our product. And by, I would say early to mid 2009, that's when we actually have some very meaningful traffic. So that was when I joined the company as employee number 1. And, using my skill as a product person, I've been in the industry long enough that I have worked in multiple companies in an operating role, in software development and even in the semiconductor industry in terms of managing, an ASIC from, design all the way to going into the customer. So when I joined them, I was basically the head of community of Wattpad. So I was, not only nurturing the users, from a user supports perspective, not only trying to kind of moderate the content, making sure that the content are what are the types that we really wanted to show, to the audience. But I work with Ivan, who is, who was the CTO, and now that he's a strategic officer. But back then he was in charge of the tech team, and I was working with him pretty much like John at the hip in terms of understanding user experience, user psychology, and engineer the product so that we can retain the users, continue to grow, and increase the engagement in such a way that we create the largest network of storytellers, on the internet. And right now, Wattpad every month have over 80 million monthly users, and we have already accumulated over 500 million of stories being shared on our platform, and all in 50, in 50 languages. And every day we have about 500,000 of new chapters upload on our platform as well. And see, the thing is, normally people kind of like, wow, this is such a great social network for storytelling, but what is more interesting is because both Allen and Ivan, they are tech background. They have, always been trying to push the envelope of what technology can do in the realm of things that they are doing. So even during I would say, 2012, 2013, that's when, people were still trying to kind of like wrap their head around machine learning, AI. That's when Ivan and Allen invested, in our first data scientists at Wattpad. So we have been, building data science, into our, engineering team very early on. So most recently, they have developed a technology, based on machine learning called Story DNA. And what it does is it basically helps, using machine to help us to identify stories that are up and rising and of quality that users love reading. And, we turn those stories that are up and rising and become, the gems in the community into TV shows, movies, and books. So we have many New York Times bestsellers already on our platform. We have blockbusting, movies, I would say in many, many countries. One of our most popular books actually was, it's a 4-book series called After. And, at one point, I think it was on the chart of, the bestseller of many countries altogether, 4 books in the top 10. So you can see that, the reach of our audience, it's not only just online on our platform, it's also offline. So when people go watch, Netflix, one of the most popular movie in 2018, it's actually called, it's called The Kissing Booth. The Kissing Booth was actually originated from Wattpad. So you can see that, people not only engage on our platform, they also engage off our platform as a form of entertainment. So Wattpad right now is really a multi-platform global entertainment company. And obviously that's Allen's story to continue on. I left the company, after they raised Series B and became an angel investor. And after a few years of doing my own fun thing as an angel.
Sorry, if I just want to ask one question about Wattpad. I know you guys raised, I don't know, 120. You raised quite a bit of money.
Quite a lot of money.
I think the last one was 55 from Tencent, and you're seeing 80 million monthly users. Maybe just talk a bit more about what's the end game of theirs, and what's the vision that you and Allen and Ivan have or had or have for Wattpad. I mean, I've heard that some people say this is sort of like the next gen Disney, right? What in your own words, what will Wattpad be?
Well, see, the thing is, if you think about Disney, it's an entertainment powerhouse, and if you look around, the entertainment industry, a lot of the entertainment industry is just basically storytelling. And in the traditional way, storytelling being turned into movies, TV shows, or books are kind of like gut feel of a few people, whether it's an executive producer or the editor, of a publishing company, they make those decisions based on past experience. But what I'm trying to, highlight here is the power of the crowd along with machine learning. It allowed Wattpad to continue to discover up and rising topics and up and rising story trends that could have, unheard of before. And that's what the world is actually moving towards now, because, if people continue to fall back on the old franchise, then it's always just Star Wars, it's always just the Disney princess, it's always just the, the Marvel superhero characters. The world continued to also crave for new storyline, new story plots, and new franchise. And for us, Wattpad is actually in the best position to help bring those and make those franchise, to the next generation. And not only just, what we're talking about, the Hollywood type of content. We're talking about local content, created by, let's say, Indonesian people for Indonesia. Filipino people made it for the Philippines. So we can actually, make use of the crowd and machine learning to unsurface all these very culturally tailored content that is for that audience, and create like a huge library of franchise, and empower the next generation of entertainment. And so the way that, Allen always described it is, we're going to be the next Disney. I think, in my opinion, it's a little bit modest in a way that Disney is always kind of like going back to the old franchise. I think we are going to be the, the powerhouse of powering the, the future entertainment in basically cross media, from movies, TV shows, webisode, books, video games, you name it. Those are all based on stories, and we have them all.
So I landed this morning, 11 a.m. In Orlando. From Toronto, and I drove past Disney. And the scary thing is, everywhere I look is hotels and resorts, and it's dead. It's dead. So yeah. Maybe this is the time for Wattpad. Last question on it, and let me know if you can't answer this. But if you take out the new investments, I know Wattpad's investing quite a bit in new areas. In your core business, are you cash generating?
Well,
is it
substance to mention, and I mean, after all, like I don't work in that company anymore. And what I can share with you is, with COVID, now that a lot of people are, stuck at home and looking for, free content or entertainment, certainly it's the best time for Wattpad to, now capture the next inflection point in user behavior. So COVID, in a way, have been a catalyst in a lot of the things that Wattpad is doing right now. So I would just leave it at that.
Okay. Can you please go on to Two Small Fish? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I left the company after they raised Series B, and the reason was, between me and Allen, we not only work 24/7. I would say if we miraculously, come up with 6 more hours per day, we will be working 37, on Wattpad. And to a point that I remember one incident, and that was, my kids were relatively young in elementary school at the time. And my elder daughter was asking me, "Hey, mommy, I need help with this math question." I said, "No problem, hold on, let me finish this email and I'll get to you." Because during the day, I have to support the users and work with the team in a local, Toronto, North American time zone. But in the evening, I actually have to manage the users from the Asian time zone. So I have a lot of users, so basically I was around the clock. So I remember that evening very, very clearly, because I say, "No problem, I'll get to you very quickly, just 2 minutes, I'll finish my email and I'll come to you." I never actually answered that question, not even today. So I was that busy to a point that I felt so, I owe it to the kids that I can outsource my housework, I can outsource my cooking, but I cannot outsource parenting. And so I told Allen, I said, "Hey, you got, the Series B by, led by Coastal Venture now. You got, the ammunition to grow the team. You can hire whoever you want. And I think, it would be only healthy for our family if I could spend more time with the kids." And I did. I took a year of sabbatical. and give more attention to my girls, and they certainly more than happy that I give them my attention. And so later on, I figure that when they go to school, that's when I can actually be doing things that I enjoy doing. So that's how I started angel investing. So I started angel investing initially using my own money, and then later on I have a couple of friends that have been pestering me. They were from the traditional industry. They say, hey, what you're doing is very fun. You want to take my money and do it together. And initially I didn't really want to manage other people's money because I was just having fun. It was a pet project, but they were so eager. I'm like, okay, so let's just do it. But let's just do it as a fun project, as a blind syndicate. Let's not, I'm not going to charge you any management fees or carry or anything. We just kind of like, every check goes out, 60% of the money comes from me, and then 20 comes from them, and let's just have fun together. And that structure, we have made quite 20 plus investments, and they and the overall portfolio has been great. With that portfolio, one of them that I'm very proud of was I was the one who helped them raise from the pre-seed round to the seed round, and then later on facilitated their investment with Gradient Ventures, which is the AI investment arm of Alphabet. And I was the one who helped them, facilitate that connection. And they're doing very, very well right now. And, on the books, that's like 10x, more than 10x, for that investment alone. So, and then I just get so sucked into the ecosystem here in Canada, because not a lot of people, have that experience of building something this massive like Wattpad from ground up. Maybe in the valleys, there may be some people who have access to early employees of Facebook, early employees of Google, or early employees of Uber. But in Canada, we don't necessarily have entrepreneurs who have built this kind of like a network effect based product in such a scale. And I'm one of the very fortunate ones. So I get sucked into the ecosystem and become advisors in startup, VC funds, in accelerators, and I'm like, what, I'm doing it now really as a full time. It initially started off as a pet project. It's like I do it if I like it, but then it turns out that I was actually running a full time gig with this. So last year I raised my I raised a venture fund, and I just had my second close. So yeah, I am now a full-fledged VC.
Great. Yeah, that's a great story, Eva. And you're right. Canada is actually small in terms of population, and I can't think of too many raising that amount of money, not to mention 80 million users. And we know Shopify is now number one, right? So maybe one day it'll be Wattpad.
That's where we're heading to. That's where we're heading to.
Okay. So tell us about the strategy. I know your core strategy is really about network effects, which is what Wattpad does, but I think everything that you do invest, that you do look at, has to do with network effects. Maybe you can explain that, and maybe you can explain it in the context of market cycles too. Does pre-COVID versus post-COVID, does it matter in terms of that strategy?
I think, let me just kind of start off and explain a little bit why I think network effect it's a very, very important strategy when it comes to investment. Because, I came from the era when, people were, doing Windows software, and then, past the .com days, and then, get into the whole mobile and social. And one thing I've noticed is that if we look around in the recent years, the most successful companies tend to be winner take all. If we look at Google, if we look at Facebook, even if we look at Apple, they are actually all network effect based. So, Google is like, the more people search, the more understanding they have when it comes to connections between websites. That's what the whole SEO is built upon, is to try to kind of like optimize it such that, you get picked up by Google. But what Google really has is the largest data network on search. So that's why, the more people search it, the algorithm actually became much more intelligent. And that's why people rather use it than other search engine on the market. Same thing for Facebook. Basically, the more people goes on Facebook, the Facebook itself becomes more and more valuable. Obviously, we go on to Facebook was like kind of like connecting with our friends, read some news feed and, all those kind of stuff. But on the surface, Facebook, it's a social network, but deep down, it's a data network because it actually understands usage, user behavior, patterns, the type of content they connect. And by leveraging on the data network that they have built over time, they now become the largest advertising network, for people to have ads on. So, but if we look at the traditional B2B type companies, including Microsoft, to a degree, if we don't have network effect in the product, we will always end up in what I call the hotcake game. It's just like you will always have to provide a solution to your customer that is the cheapest and have the most bells and whistles. Because, if there is another company providing similar service, they may be cheaper and they may have, cheaper, but at the same time have more bells and whistles, then all of a sudden, because it's just a productivity tool, people can just switch very easily. So think about Word, Microsoft Word versus Google Docs. Of course, it's a migration pain, but it's the same. It's just tools. It's just a word processor. Unless you do a lot of advanced, mail merge, all those kind of like, very, very sophisticated features. Otherwise, if it is just a kind of like a typewriter type functionality that you're looking for, Google Docs works perfectly, and it doesn't cost you a dime. And that's how Google basically stole some market share from Microsoft when it comes to the Microsoft Office suite, right? So that's why I think the network effect, it's a very important investment thesis. I think it actually applies to all verticals, from fintech to medtech, consumer ad, and particularly if companies are actually building AI has to feed on a data network. AI cannot be run only based on historical data and no fresh data going in. So by definition, AI is based on a network effect in the data layer, to make it continuously improving. So
can you give maybe one or two examples in your portfolio, Eva, that exemplifies this network effect? But maybe it's not something that we would think of. That's like when I think of Wattpad, a social media network for young writers, you've got 80 million. I can see how this is self-sustaining now. So that to me is kind of something that I get. Are there other network effect companies that are doing well in your portfolio with business models that might surprise us, or that would surprise you?
Even if we use Wattpad, you understand what's the power of data network effect, right? Because you use machine learning to say, hey, machine, go find me the best story so that we can turn it into a TV show. Well, the machine has to have some what I call seedings, right? You have to seed the machine so that the machine understand what they are looking for. So imagine if the story DNA technology in Wattpad was fed with Charles Dickens, Jane Austen. What they're gonna find is, The Old Man and the Sea, that type of content. I'm not saying those are bad content, but they are certainly not capturing pop culture. So that's why for any machine learning, you have to have the latest and greatest data come in on a continuous basis. So imagine in the early, 2010, 12, 13 timeframe, well, actually 2010, 2011 timeframe, the most popular stories on Wattpad at the time was Justin Bieber fan fiction, right? So if I continue to feed the machine with Justin Bieber fan fiction, right now, the predictions are all wrong. So that's why you need to have a data network that has a continuous influx of new data so that the machine can actually learn based on new data on every day. So over time, then the machine will see, oh, okay, looks like that I'm seeing more and more BTS fan fiction now, the Korean boy band. So before anybody knows that the BTS boy band is actually up and rising, the machine will know. Because all of a sudden they recognize a pattern of upload, they recognize a pattern of stories being told, and then all of a sudden, then they will be able to predict much sooner than any of those symptoms actually become evidence in human eyes. So that's what I meant by data network. It's not only just social network, people making friends. It's like, same thing for Facebook. Why Facebook have this whole Cambridge Analytica, scandal was because of the whole data set. They actually know what people are reading and they can predict what people likes to read. That's why they continue to feed things, to them that feeds the appetite. But maybe one day I was, liking this type of content, and then over time, the machine keeps feeding me other things. And now that I enjoy something totally different. So that's what the data network, the power of the data network can help predict, but at the same time, in some ways manipulate as well, right?
Last week we had Bobby Lee as a guest. He's a huge Bitcoin expert. He started the first Bitcoin exchange in China. He was at a Bitcoin Foundation, and he argued that Bitcoin will. I know you're very familiar with blockchain, Eva. But he argued that Bitcoin is going to 1 million, 2 million because of the network effect that it has built since inception. Do you agree with that?
To a degree, I do. But at the same time, I don't necessarily see that that's the trend right now. The way that I see things, from my end as an investor, Bitcoin certainly has its value, and it has already shown the world, how well it stores value, over time. But at the same time, if I'm looking at cryptocurrency or blockchain as a whole category, I need to step back a few layers rather than being sucked into the stored value in a specific a coin right now. I have to ask myself, for any of these coins or tokens that's in the market right now, what's the utility? And I think not until I see a mass adoption when it comes to utility, I'm still trying to kind of figure what does that mean when you have all these values in Bitcoin, but you don't necessarily have utility, because your Bitcoin goes up to, I don't know, $12,000 per coin, but you still have to make use of that coin and convert it into fiat in order to enjoy the value of it. Well, I'm sure that there are some utility within the blockchain or crypto ecosystem that you can use, no doubt about it. But you cannot necessarily, at least at this stage, not that I know of right now, that you can use your Bitcoin and transfer it to Sam's account, and Sam's, now give me his house. You just don't have that kind of utility yet. So not until I see that the currency actually have physical life type utility, it is still a store value. I think as a store value, I think it's a great investment, to park your asset and store it. But at the same time, right now, relatively speaking, is only still a small percentage of people in developed countries that actually have access to these kind of store value. Obviously some people will argue that the developing country like the Brazil, Venezuela, that's the best place to actually do it. I don't disagree with it at all. I think, if one of the developing country completely turned it into crypto, I think it will be very, very exciting, opportunity to see how that actually can transform a country, because it's, no central bank, that kind of thing. I think it will be a fascinating a scenario for us to all learn from. But I think we're not there yet. I think we'll get there. But once we get there, I don't necessarily know which cryptocurrency specifically then is it going to have that utility and storage, value in the coin. I don't know. I wish I have a crystal ball, but I just couldn't tell right now. Because, if we look at utility, certainly, the Libra group is trying to make that happen. The more companies come on and say, yes, let's just kind of do Libra, then all of a sudden there's a potential of utilities, within that ecosystem. Like imagine if Facebook uses it, Apple uses it, Google uses it, and then all of a sudden, I have some Libra, then you can have utility with it. But well, right now that thing is not going anywhere. I don't, maybe let me put it this way, I haven't heard anything about it so far.
Sure.
And so I don't know. Yeah.
I think I'm exactly in the same page. We don't really know yet. But let's come back to your portfolio. I was just looking at the website. You've got some really interesting ones that have raised a lot of money following your investment. Just pick one or two that illustrates this network effect and why you think it's going to blow out, if not already.
So let's just talk about the company that I mentioned earlier. That I helped let facilitate a connection for them to raise Series A from Gradient Ventures. So this company is called BenchSize. So BenchSize started by a group of PhDs from U of T. They are scientists and they do life science, chemistry, type kind of research. And for them, one of the biggest problems for them in the day-to-day life as researcher is actually setting up, the experiments. A lot of these biotech experiments that they need to do is to actually, make use of protein, so that they can actually see how other things work in that environment. And they had a hard time finding data around the protein that they wanted to use. So they developed the technology that basically analyzed all the medical journals online. And then, not only understand it, but using AI to understand it in such a way that they can compartmentalize, the protein data, so that it became the destination to search for protein data. So let's say if you are, trying to look for protein A, originally protein A may be used by some AIDS researcher, some COVID researcher, and then some, a heart attack researcher. But for me, I'm doing, I don't know, like genetic, that kind of research. I may not be able to read all kinds of medical journals to just kind of gather the information about protein A. So what BenchSize did is they create that kind of like an AI to understand all the medical journals. So when I go to the destination, I'm like, show me protein A, then it will pull up all the data and give me the necessary information so that I can make use of other people's learning and set up my experiment properly. So when they raised a series at the pre-seed round and from one of the accelerator, they didn't really understand, what's the next step, or they didn't, they cannot really imagine what's the next step for them to monetize on the technology. So they were thinking maybe we should charge, researcher to do the search, every searcher pays some money or so on and so forth. So when they met me, I'm like, hold on a second. I said, to me, yes, you may have some AI, you have AI, you may have some data when it comes to analyzing all the medical journal. And it's a data network, but the data network is easily replicable. Meaning that because all you access are published public medical journals. If there's another group of researchers, come up with the same algorithm or better algorithm, then there's no differentiator. They can charge, less money and more bells and whistles, but then it's still a tool. I said, for them to become a gem in, for investment, they have to figure out what is the necessary network effect they need to build in the product so that they can continuously have a proprietary influx of data that nobody else have. And they were like, okay, let's just figure what does that look like? So we helped them brainstorm a bit, and I just asked one question. I say, look, what is the most proprietary data that no one else have right now. They said, well, all those data that are not published, then it's the most proprietary. I'm like, why are they not published? Well, because the experiment is not finished, or they have, or the experiment may even fail, but the protein data is still important. The experiment itself failed, but then the behavior of the protein could be actually very important. So I said, well, why don't you create a feature on your product and allow people to actually log and share those data? And then all of a sudden, you become the most proprietary data network on protein data. And that's what they did. They said, yes, you're right, because scientists has already been asking us, meaning them, how can they log their own data, before actually having it published. Or sometimes they may not want to publish, because, it's still fragmented, but they want to actually be able to share it,
Sure.
on the platform. So with that kind of like a proprietary data set, proprietary data network they have ended up creating. So on surface, it's a search engine, but underneath it is actually a proprietary data network that has the most data that scientists are actually looking for. So with that, with that strategy, then they raised the seed round, and then later on raised the A round from Gradient, and then the more people contribute, the more people search, they all of a sudden become another Google, but they become another Google for protein, and pharmaceutical information. So all of a sudden, pharmaceutical companies becomes their B2B client, because they're like, hold on a second, we want to know what people are searching so that we can actually understand the usage of our product within the community. And we want to know why people are looking for our product, or what other proteins people are actually in demand of. So think about it. It's very much like Wattpad. Movie companies are coming to us, tell us what's up and rising. What movies should we make? What are people reading these days? So that's how Benchside, in a way, grow their product from just a search engine, search service for scientists, and become, the proprietary data network for all the stakeholders to come, perform their job. So that's why I'm like, right now, they are actually making their product useful in a COVID time right now, because there's so many researchers, like literally the whole world are racing to find a vaccine. And how do you find a vaccine? You cannot just dream up with protein. You cannot just dream up with things. You kind of like create the experiments. So you need a lot of collaboration. You need a lot of data. So that's why, Benchside is now helping the COVID research community so much that that is the platform for them to search and look for data, so that they can actually, also share some of their findings, and within the community. So that's how I see it's such a transformative type of product that the world is actually in need right now.
That's a good example, Eva. Do you have a concern? I know I left China 7 years ago or so, but even 10 years ago, I remember the VC said investors were concerned that BAT, now we have ByteDance and TikTok, others, that the game of AI and big data is really eaten by those big boys, right? Like essentially, if you get anything successful in a certain vertical, they'll squish you, right? And obviously in America, in North America, you've got the FAANGs. Is that a concern for you? Or do you find there's still a lot of verticals that are just really out of those
that's a
monsters?
very fair question. That's a very fair question. BAT, Baidu, Alibaba, Tencent, that's, collectively BAT in China versus the FANG in here, certainly are basically the data powerhouse, for the two different worlds.
It's almost like the incumbents get stronger and stronger. And if you're the startup, because they have more data, right? How do you fight the incumbent when they're getting so much bigger?
They fight the incumbent by capturing new consumer or to say customer behavior, right? People like TikTok right now, but 10 years ago they did not. But who knows, but maybe, in 5 years, maybe people don't want to do TikTok anymore. They want to do something else, right? So Facebook certainly right now is so entrenched in our life right now, even though a lot of people say, I hate Facebook. I don't ever go, but you will never delete Facebook. However much you don't like it,
Our kids not on it. Our kids are not on it. They're in Snap and TikTok, right? They're not really on.
Yeah, but sooner or later they will have some sort of that's what I meant. I think that for us as innovator, we are innovating new products, to present to the world and either lead a new behavior or capitalize on a new behavior that people are exhibiting right now. So if we actually look at post-COVID, I think a lot of the user behavior will change. And, that's why I think this is the best time to actually innovate in such a way that we are betting on a new set of paradigms moving forward. And that new set of paradigms for sure will allow us to capture a new audience, new trends, and then on a sudden, we will have another Snapchat, or maybe even another Facebook in different forms. I'm not saying that it has to be, it will be the same. It definitely will not look the same. And ultimately, you're right, the other conglomerate, the big ones, may want to copy, and we can never stop them. But if you have a network effect-based product, you should have that network to defend your turf. Look at what ByteDance actually is. It's Musical.ly, right?
Yeah.
They have enough of an audience. They have enough of a network. That's why ByteDance had no choice but to buy them, right?
Goodbye. So you mentioned COVID. It may be too early, but what are you seeing that's different from an investment standpoint, Eva? This behavior change that you mentioned. What are you seeing that is maybe catching your attention from an investment standpoint?
I think, COVID right now presents us a lot of new paradigms right now. One thing I already see, and I think it will present a challenge to a lot of startups, even traditional companies, that I am sure that everybody will agree with me, is the whole wholesale model, right? In the old days, whether you want to buy grocery or you want to buy clothes or whatever, it's always, the manufacturer go through the wholesaler, and then the wholesaler go to retail. This whole COVID, those protocols are completely broken. Right now, there are wholesalers literally scrambling to put up a Shopify site or a Wix site, and they find their own drivers or whatever, and they start delivering. And I bet you they will not take those down post-COVID. Right? So what does that mean to retailers? If I'm actually now, have the comfort, in the old days, I have to, only go to Instacart or, to get my grocery delivered. But now I have, Philip Produce, and then, a Charles Meat. They just deliver right at my home. They used to be just wholesaler that I can never get their product, but now I can. You think that they're going to take away that site and get out of that business? Why? They actually have higher margin, that's more money to keep. So what does that mean, to the retailers? Are we going to continue to see, big box superstore open more and more? Maybe in the suburb, maybe not. I don't know. But what I mean is that then the whole AI algorithms that will optimize for retailers, it's going to be changed. It has to change. The business model for retailers has to change. So all of a sudden, what I'm saying is that a lot of the principles, the hypothesis, or even practices that was working before may no longer work. And that's why I think there are a lot of companies, old and new, are really scrambling, trying to capitalize on this inflection point in the society. So, digitalization, it's like accelerated in so quickly that people never thought of, right? Look at schools. People were still kind of debating, should we have online learning or, should we have classroom and all those kind of stuff. But lo and behold, you have no choice. E-learning on the sun became the hottest, field. Ed tech in the past has always been kind of like, I don't know, you're going to sell it to school, takes forever to sell, and then you have privacy issues and yada, yada, yada. It was not a sexy field. But now everyone is scrambling to get tools and move into this new normal. Parents may be averse to it in the beginning, but now they have okay, I am working from home. I cannot attend to my kids and they cannot go to school. So I got to find them some good educational games for them to actually engage. So all of a sudden, the ed tech sector became very hot, right? So COVID certainly have turned things upside down. Many of our habits are here to stay. And it's really up to the startup C stage right now to adapt themselves to capitalize on this whole change in behavior.
Okay, good. I'll just ask one more. Maybe we can open it to the audience, and it'd be great if you guys come on. Don't be shy. Show your handsome faces and lovely faces. Eva, you're a huge proponent of Canadian tech and Canadian ventures, and also women's tech. I think there's a question about how you see the tech ecosystem here differing versus, let's say, US or China, and what do you see the future of Canadian Toronto tech?
I think Canadian tech has, the best asset that we can actually capitalize as a country. If we look at the US and China, my apology, my dog is certainly trying to hunt in right now. But if we look at China and the US, their design thinking or their startup thinking is actually very homogenous, right? US startups, while they want to be global, they are very aggressive. They always want to become, a global company. But a lot of their thinking, design thinking, is very US oriented. I still remember some jokes around like Google cars will not be able to drive on 401 because the moment they see a white big, a lump of stuff in front of them, they will know what that is. Right?
True. That's true. Yeah.
But at the same time in China, the whole user behavior, the whole infrastructure is so drastically different. So that's why to export technology from China to the rest of the world certainly have that cultural shift that those companies has to adapt, in order to be able to get into the global audience. So what I'm trying to say is the two powerhouse in the world right now, even though they are very powerful, but they seems to be creating solutions for one side of the world. But Canada is in the best position to create global products. Think about our population mix. Half of our population in Toronto are immigrants. If you look at the team at Wattpad, half of the team actually were born outside of Canada, and half of them actually speak 2 languages.
Wow.
So what that means is, if you want to build a global product, Canada basically has all those resources that you need to pilot those markets. Think about if you want to create a product that works for India and North America. Well, we have a ginormous, Southeast Asian community here in Scarborough, right? So to find beta tester, to find local content, or even adapt the product to work for those community, we have those community here. So you can just launch, an English version, and then and then another version, or maybe just go parallel for that audience, and you can test it locally here. Same thing, when Wattpad first started and to build the international team, we basically just hired all the people from local. Like the Filipino country manager was local. Very quickly we found them, right? And then as we continue to kind of like find resources for us to understand some of the some of the audience in other countries, we can easily find them here. So that's why I think Canada, if we really want to play to win, we must play this multicultural advantage for ourselves so that we can create global product right up from the get-go. And that's what I'm encouraging every single of my portfolio companies is like, when we are in the best position in Canada to create global products in a way that we have such a diverse population. If your workforce is diverse enough and represent, the different voices from different culture or different, groups of people, it may not be ethnic. It could be just, teenager versus old people, right? We are in the best position to create that product that I love globally. I think we have that strength, and we should leverage
that. So Victor just asked, I guess, the digital economy that Canada is trying to build, that you're trying to build, is it sustainable? Citing BlackBerry, Nortel. My addendum to that question, Eva, is there's been, I've heard from a lot of sources. Again, I'm a newbie to Canada, as you know, 2 years newbie to Canada. But in talking to folks like yourself, what one consistent feedback I get is Canada has less of those crazy visionary founders, such as Allen and yourself, right? Such as Jack, and more followers. So can you kind of comment on both those comments? Do you agree? Do you think it's changing? Do you think this is sustainable?
I think to a degree, I agree, but I don't think it's a matter of being crazy or not. I think Canadian culture, to describe it is sometimes we're too Canadian. Meaning that sometimes we can be content easily. So yes, I have seen founders pitching to me, and they literally were, they were so worried about me as an investor that I may lock in my investment for too long. So they kept, for the first, for the whole half an hour, they keep saying, yeah, we're going to raise this round, we're going to grow this business, and, probably in 3 years, we're going to sell it, and then we'll be able to kind of return you, like a 2-3x. I'm like, hold on. I'm not your friends and family round.
Yeah.
I'm a VC. I'm here to invest in a long haul and hope that you will become 100x for me. That's what I'm here for. And obviously there are people like, oh, wow, I don't know. I never thought that far out. But some of them actually like, thank you. I needed someone to tell me that I could actually run this journey. So right now, the traditional Canadian mindset of, being modest, being content, certainly is still kind of like lingering in our culture. But remember what I said, our population now made up of 50% immigrants.
Yeah.
The internet literally has brought us so much closer together that we can learn from others so much easier than ever before. So the new entrepreneurs that I'm dealing with right now, I'm talking about, the one that are 20 years old, early 30s, they are actually very, very hungry in a way that they want to build the next Facebook. They want to build the next Google. And I think in a way, it's us as the investment community have more appetite to help them to get there. Because, while, we have an up and rising new generation of entrepreneurs, we need an up and rising new generation of investors. Because the old days of investors, they're very traditional. They look at revenue as the holy grail. I'm not saying that's wrong. Sometimes it may be not the right metrics at the right time. So we need more aggressive investors in an ecosystem to back these very visionary type entrepreneurs. Then we will be able to grow. I'm actually very bullish because we see more and more entrepreneurs that are not content and they are hungry to build the next unicorn. And we just need our investment community to step up. And I'm seeing a lot of that happening already. We have new funds coming out. We have, early stage fund right now getting into the growth stage to help our companies to grow beyond and become bigger. So I think, as a whole, our ecosystem is growing as well. And
yeah, I agree.
I'm bullish.
Yeah, I think thanks to Mr. Trump, that's also helping us, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Vinay has thank you for that. Vinay has a question. How do you see B2C startups in the marketplace economy emerge out of the pandemic, since the consumer side marketplace has taken a hit in most sectors?
I think, for any marketplace that are in the consumer space right now, they have to think really, really hard on the assumptions that they made prior COVID. A lot of people, when they built, for example, when I was, in the last few years looking at deals, there were many deals that came my way, trying to create marketplace, B2C marketplace to surface the hospitality industry, to surface the, the travel industry. They may be, our, recreational vehicle like RV marketplace. There may be some, glamping type, marketplace and so on and so forth, or maybe some, helping part-time restaurants workers to find part-time shifts and stuff like that. Whatever assumptions they have made in the past, I encourage you to throw them out of the window completely. And look at what people are doing right now, so in such a way that you have to make assumptions of what practice are here to stay, and if they are to stay, how is that impacting that industry completely? And that's why I mean by, when we look at B2C marketplaces, it's actually ultra important to understand the mentality and the psychology of the people, not even users, people in general. What they really want and how you're going to actually adapt your business to move with the paradigm per se. Or I can say is you can also try to look at how people are struggling right now in a very unique way. For example, we are told not to be close with people because we have to do social distancing. For the first few weeks, we have no problem. But right now, I bet you're so craving for that human connections right now. So what's that supposed to mean? It's kind of like a conflicting desire. On one hand, you want to connect, and on one hand, you want to keep a distance. So I am actually trying to, wrestle on this idea on my own. It's like, what does that mean when it comes to new user behavior on a social context? And whoever can create a product that balance that two conflict, I guarantee you it will be a very interesting model, and it may actually solve, a conflicting desire in human and become the new way of social. And I'm waiting for innovators to solve this conflicting desire and present me with new ideas.
Okay, there's probably somebody in the audience. It's past 9. I'll just ask there's another Canadian question. What Canadian industry sectors are you bullish on?
That's to me, it's a difficult question for me to answer. The reason is because I'm agnostic when it comes to investment. So I don't necessarily, pick an industry and say fintech or prop tech or, or social media and so on and so forth. But I can tell you that if we look at the tech talent here in Canada, we have, a strong following of Professor Jeffrey Hinton. So our AI talent here is very, very strong. And to a degree, I think our blockchain talents are also have a very strong pool as well. Because, people may say, oh yeah, a lot of the crypto development is now in Switzerland and yada, yada, because of the financial industry over there, yada, yada, yada. But at the same time, I'm talking about, blockchain developers. They may not necessarily, working on crypto. There are a lot of enterprise blockchains, product that still needs to innovate on. And so I think, if we look at the ecosystem, Canada is a good pilot ground for any B2B product, any B2B. Because we have friendly environment. Our government is very supportive, and the community is small enough that any investors can always have a 1 degree of separation with some of the enterprises in our country. So to have that kind of like a pilot relationship, I think is relatively easy. Building B2B, B2C product, yes, that could be a challenge because Canada doesn't have, a big enough population to make it a self-sustained ecosystem for a B2C product. But again, I think Canada is a great launching ground for B2C product because of our advantage of the diversity. And also, if we look at Skip the Dishes, so Skip the Dishes was one of my portfolio companies in my angel portfolio, and that has given me a great return. So the story with Skip the Dishes goes like this. When they first came to us, there were multiple food delivery companies, in the ecosystem. And it's like, oh my gosh, another food delivery company. Oh my gosh, that kind of like a, environment. But when they came to us, they have some very unique value proposition. And that was, they focus on second tier cities only. They purposely avoided Toronto, but went to Etobicoke,
Okay.
And the reason was because the whole logistics optimization is drastically different for low density markets versus high density market. So they win big time in the low density market. So later on, when they get acquired by Just Eat, one of the things that Just Eat wants to leverage is their expertise in going into second tier markets. So they helped Just Eat to launch into Australia, and it was a great success. So that's what it means by, Canada, it's a great environment to launch products and pilot. And because our unique advantage in multicultural, and also we have a big city, like Toronto, which is comparable to New York, San Francisco, and, Chicago. But then at the same time, we have low density markets like Winnipeg, Calgary, that can be easily, replicate in, let's say, in Australia, or even in, the middle of the US. So we actually have such a diverse type of landscape, what I mean landscape, I mean markets, that allowed us to play around with and then launch global. So I just see that this is our home turf advantage, and we should totally leverage this.
Good. Great. There's a question, I think it's from one of my daughters. What's the best way for a young girl, teen, student to get involved in technology? I guess implicit in that question is to become the next Eva Lau.
there's only one Eva Lau. You should be the next Chloe Yang,
Okay.
So, I encourage young girls to go and have fun and not to worry much about how people feel about us. I'm specifically speaking to girls right now because I think when we, for girls, for our upbringing, you may have the loveliest parents and the loveliest, family to support you, but to some degree, we always want to be liked. We always worry about how people think about us. That's why you look at the mirror. You just do what I'm just doing right now, is to make sure that Sam doesn't see my hair flipping out, Don't worry about that. Just go and have fun and learn everything that you can and experiment. I always encourage girls, to go into STEM because I think that's where the future is, and that's how you will be able to help define the world, because the world needs more people. And this is something that I speak really truly about, because traditionally STEM are littered with men. And I think for the longest time, women have been living in a world that we're being told by men what to do. Just think about the sanitary product that you use. I bet you must be signed it by men. That's why it was not that comfortable to wear. So we know us better, and we are representing half of the world. So the world needs more people like you to go into the ecosystem and innovate, because we know how half of the world actually operates, and we know how, what half of the world actually want. So be brave, go experiment. And one thing, the most important thing is don't worry about failure. I guarantee you will fail. I guarantee you'll fail many, 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 many times. But what those things do to you is to make you a stronger and better person as you continue to grow. So every time you fail, make sure you give yourself a good, pat on the shoulder and like, yeah, I failed. So what? Let's move on. How's that sound to you, huh?
Sounds good to me. That's good advice. Great advice. Okay, there. You're welcome. Eva says. So Eva, let's assume that you and Allen are poor. You guys are working salary jobs, just scratching by, feeding the kids, and then you found you inherited $100,000, and you want to invest this $100,000 for your daughters. And it's not trading, investing. Just you put it in a portfolio of stuff, investments for, let's say, 5-10 years. Where would you put that money starting today?
Are you asking me, the type of investment that I will invest so that my kids will benefit from them? Is that what?
Yeah, so it's a long-term investment. Versus obviously, you're not going to put 100% into your venture fund. Like, how would you? I'm just curious, how will you allocate your $100,000, let's say?
I think if we look at right now in this particular economy, putting money in the stock market, I don't necessarily buy that right now, because specifically if you look at the stock in the US right now, I think a lot of them are actually being inflated by the corporations. Think about the whole productivity has gone down so much, but yet at the same time, the stock market can go up and down like a toilet seat. I'm not too sure if this is where I would put my money in per se at this particular moment. I do still believe in the public market to some degree, but certainly I will not put all my money in the public market. Maybe I'll put 10%, 15% in the public market. I certainly will, if I have $100,000 free sitting around doing nothing, I probably will put some in crypto. particularly in Bitcoin and Ethereum. You know, those are good places to park values right now. I think the chances of it vaporizing over 5-10 years, I think it's unlikely. But hey, I'm a risk taker, so I will put another maybe 10-15% in there. So
Okay. Wow. Okay.
yeah, and I'm actually very bullish when it comes to the tech ecosystem. I think right now is actually the best time to invest in tech innovations right now. Certainly not blindly. You have to know what you're looking at. And I think I trust myself in terms of picking the winners. And it's not just a blind bet, right? Because I'm putting the skin in the game and helping these companies by leveraging my knowledge of how we did it and help them to move forward. It's not like I gave them the money and walked away, right? But I think at the same time right now, cash is king. So hang on to some cash.
Okay. So 10-15% in equities, 10-15% in blockchain crypto, which is actually high allocation. I think your recommendation is higher than Bobby Lee's.
I would say maybe not 10%, not 15%, but maybe for me, the 10% mark. I think it's for me. Anything go below 10%, it's meaningless. You may as well not do it.
Got it. Okay.
The way that I'm like, if you put in 5% in there, it's too small a number. It's a rounding error. So for me, I don't. Maybe I'm too kind of, in some way, Chinese way to put it. It's like I'm one of those people who are, too broad stroke. Like I do things in kind of like big buckets. I don't
Sure.
do things.
Sure.
So anything below 10%, I think it's just a rounding error. I wouldn't don't do it.
How does the audience play the tech that you're so passionate about? Because obviously your fund has accredited. It's not necessarily open. How would a normal person play the tech future that you're betting on? Invest. What's the best way?
I think everyone is different, right? The startup, the tech ecosystem is not necessarily, for the faint of heart. Like I didn't take money from my mother. I like she said, "Oh, you're investing. Can I put money in?" No. I said no, no, because I know that if she lose just 10%, she's gonna be like losing sleep over, right? So investing in these high risk, high return type investment, it's really not for everyone. But what I encourage people, especially young people, that they can do is to join the community in some ways. Either start working for a startup, get some stock options, put your heart and everything in it to help it grow to become a next unicorn. That not only gives you great experience, it's a lot of fun, and the return could be very, very high. That's how I made my first bucket of money, by the way. I joined a startup in my first job in a software company, and I made some money with my stock option, and then I made more money also later on in the second company I joined. At the time, it was no longer a startup, but it was at the growth stage. And yet I ride that ride, and that gave me a great return on my stock options with them. So joining the tech ecosystem, find a great company that you're very passionate about and help build it. Your sweat will translate into wealth. That's my experience.
Good. I think we have time for one more question. Vinay asks, while investing in network effect startups, what do you think is more important, idea and long-term vision, team background, attributes, product market fit, or anything else?
Product market fit. I think,
okay.
In all circumstances, product market fit, it's always the grail to be successful. You may have, great founders, and, they will hustle, they will continue to sig and sag, which is great. But I've also seen, founders that, went into a rut of not being able to get out from their utopia and face the reality of what users really want. Then they actually never find product market fit, right? So that's why I think for me as a product person, I have helped many companies and to build and grow their products. It's always about your users or your customer loving your product, and that's the only way to win.
Okay, fantastic. All right, guys and ladies, those are great questions and amazing content. I learned so much, Eva. If nothing else, we will make this available in a couple of days on YouTube.
Of course.
And Eva, amazing always. Oh, just a backstory. Eva, this is the second time we spent more than an hour together. I see you in a lot of conferences where you're always busy, always surrounded by people. Eva was one of the first people I talked to. We were introduced by a friend. I never met her. I was still in Taiwan, and Eva, you recall, you gave me more than an hour. We had never met. We were just introduced, and all these stupid questions about Toronto, about schools, about living. And Eva, I was expecting like 10 minutes, so she gave me like more than an hour and answer all dumb questions. So
well, for me, it's always making sure that whoever come my way. I think I'm hoping that I can be useful to them and be able to help them make life-changing decisions, especially if they have big decisions to make. I just want to be thorough. I just want to make sure that I have given my share of all my knowledge, so that I have no regrets. I told him everything. I told him everything.
Well, thank you, Ben. That was a great decision to come to Canada. Thank you, and thank you for tonight's fantastic content and learning, Eva. All right.
Glad.
Okay. We'll call it a night. Thank you.
I hope everybody enjoyed this chat. And you guys can connect me on LinkedIn and on Twitter and on Insta. My handle is Mrs. Eva Lau. Okay.
Yes, and we'll post Eva's different. She's at all the social media. We'll post those in the review as well, Eva.
Yes, of course.
Thank you. All right. Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. Please visit Wizards Institute to access the blog summary of today's session, to learn more about other speakers, and to network with other investment wizards. Wizards Institute, the #1 community to learn smart investing and financial freedom.